Hello everyone, Xfords here, and welcome to JoJolion Chapter 101 review. We're off hiatus, and we get to talk about this series again, and we get new JoJolion content. So hopefully you guys enjoyed your JoJolion break last month, but time to get back into it. And I want to start off by saying this chapter is pretty underwhelming, unfortunately, because we've been waiting for it for 2 months, and it's one of the shortest JoJolion chapters I've seen in quite a long time. It's 30 pages. Technically 31, but I don't really count the cover page. And as well as we probably have like 8 or 9 pages of just Araki, I love seeing Araki draw, but at this point in the story, chapter 101, crazy things are happening. I'd much rather see more dialogue and progression of the story than Toru eating bees, which we'll see in a little bit. But before we get into the review, I just want to thank you guys all so much for supporting the Break Free launch in the last video. We are completely sold out of disc designs. We have a few 1999 designs left in black and white if you guys wear smaller sizes, and the Break Free branded merchandise like this and the BF logo on the left shoulder. Those are available as well. So you guys can shop Break Free in the link down below at breakfreesupply.com, and thank you guys all for supporting the launch. But getting on to this month's chapter review. So starting with the cover page, we have Within the Maelstrom of Calamity, Pull in Hope, and just Yasuo looking so goddamn sad. Araki is just a sadist at this point. I mean, well, that might not be the right word, but he's a misogynist, honestly. He's destroying Yasuo. He's just putting her in the worst situations, and I haven't seen her with a smile in months, maybe even years. So Yasuo is now officially missing her right arm and just yearning for the good old days, the early JoJolion moments where she got to be happy, her and Josuke could hang out, she had friends, she had a life, and now it's just misery, trapped in this endless calamity, quite literally. And it is Endless Calamity Part 7 for this chapter. So before we get into the actual chapter, I just want to give you guys a bit of a recap, because we did have a month off, and just kind of see where everyone is and touch base on the current state of JoJolion. Okay, main characters, Josuke and Mamazuku, they are at the TG University Hospital in the fight against the old man appearance, or the stand appearance of the head doctor. Obviously, Josuke was waiting for the head doctor to pursue him, and we're in that whole situation. And we left off last chapter with Josuke getting the whole spin reveal, where it's like, Josuke, your bubbles are spinning. And we got to theorize a whole lot about that in chapter 100 review, but unfortunately, not much comes of that in this chapter, as we are switching over to Yasuo in Joshu's perspective for the most part. So, speaking of that, at the Higashikada estate, we have Toru in the leaves watching this calamity happen to Yasuo, and then at the I believe it was either chapter 99 or 100, Joshu approached Yasuo, so we knew that they were going to have some sort of interaction in the future, which we see in this chapter. And then in the house, I made the prediction. I said, guys, I think Jobin is dead. Like, I don't see any way Jobin could recover from what happened to him a few chapters ago unless he ate the new Rokakaka and some sort of equivalent exchange happened. And in this chapter, Joshu straight up says that Jobin is dead. So we could see him come back, but I'm honestly really confident that Jobin's dead, and that would be kind of a strange way to kill off Jobin. That it felt really sudden, because Jobin has just been built up a lot throughout this part, and I mean, maybe it's just strange seeing a death in JoJolion, which really hasn't happened to any of the main characters yet. And all the other Higashikata family members, we have Daya and Hato inside the house, just sort of distraught, crying about the loss of their... they don't know Jobin's dead, but they know that Narisuke is quote-unquote dead. A lot of fake-out deaths happening, so they're distraught. Mitsuba's distraught. Jobin's laying down. And Tsurugi is being affected by the rock disease. So really messed up stuff happening. The family is falling apart, and that's where we are to pick up in JoJolion 100. And like I said, how we're going to be focusing on Yasuo and Joshu throughout this chapter. JoJolion reviews, or JoJolion chapters, typically take up like two perspectives. Like, we'll see what Josuke is up to, then we'll see what Jobin or Joshu or Yasuo is up to, and we switch between. But in this chapter, there's like a page or two where we see the hospital, but pretty much this whole chapter takes place in one setting, in one area, between two characters outside the Higashikada estate. A little underwhelming, especially because we've been waiting for 2 months, but any JoJolion is good JoJolion. I personally would have just liked a nice 45, 48 page chapter this month, but who wouldn't? So getting on into the chapter, starting off here, we have Toru being shady, hanging out outside the Higashikada estate, and I guess using his stand ability in a sense, but not interacting with anyone. And we see some interesting dialogue from him in this chapter that gives more insight on how his stand might work, the wonder of you. But before that, just Araki things where Toru just walks up to a beehive and the bees sting him, which is, I guess, interesting to take note of. When they sting him, his skin just turns to rock, kind of like Armstrong from Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. So every time you try to deal damage to him, his skin hardens. I don't know why that reference came to my head, but that's what it reminded me of, as well as he's eating the bees. So yeah, just Araki things might hold a little bit of symbolism in some way, or he's just eating the bees to eat them. Why would you eat the bees? They raised you, Toru. You were raised by bees. Why would you do that to them? They took care of you when you were a baby, and this is how you return the favor? By killing them when they sting you, because I'm pretty sure bees, when they sting, they die or something like that, and then he's eating them. Whatever. If you guys might know what this might symbolize, Toru eating bees, let me know in the comments down below. And in the last panel right here, we get this part where I always talked about how there's these pages where it looks like Toru is activated, or he's soul swapping, or he's switching bodies. And that's when we get right here where Toru's face goes blank. It's sort of a low opacity, and then we see the stand behind him. And then boom, we switch perspectives over the TG University Hospital, where we see Mamazuku, who is probably also dead. All my favorite characters in JoJolion are dying right now. This is awful. Jobin's probably dead. Mamazuku is definitely dead after this. Like, Jesus, man. And Yasuo gets better this chapter, but it's still unfortunate seeing her so messed up. But really nothing comes from this interaction here. We see the bubbles spinning like we saw in the last chapter. They make note of how the bubbles phase through Mamazuku's suit, so we don't really know how that explains, or how that is going to be explained. I talked about in the last chapter how I feel like the head doctor's ability is to rewrite reality and replace their universe with things that have happened in other universes and really crazy shit, but nothing really comes of it. You just get another panel here of Josuke being really upset, like myself, that Mamazuku is on the ground and he has a hole in his stomach, he has a hole in his head, and the head doctor just chilling in the background, but pretty much just reiterated dialogue from chapter 100. Nothing really new. This is the important dialogue I mentioned earlier in this video that Toru said that might give some insight on how the Wonder of You works. He says, but regardless, he's still inside the calamity and Mamazuku is self-destructed. And we see that phrasing later in the chapter as well, where Toru is talking about Yasuo and he's like, okay, so Yasuo, spoilers, Yasuo is about to bite the new Rokakaka, and Toru is like, should I stop this? Well, even if she does eat it, nothing can go right for her because she's inside the calamity. So I guess that's a good way to visualize when a character is being affected by the head doctor's stand. He places you inside the calamity. So I guess it's a trigger he can turn on and off, and that's why Yasuo really can't escape it, and no matter what Yasuo tries to do, bad things are going to happen to her because she's just, this ability is so OP, by the way. Like, people are saying that this might not be the main villain, this might not be the final fight. Like, this is up there, like top three strongest stands in JoJo. It's pretty much like Over Heaven from Eyes of Heaven, where Dio can just rewrite reality. Like, this is really, really powerful. This is more powerful than D4C by far, and it's just really crazy to think that this wouldn't be the last villain, because like I don't even know how the characters are even going to begin to beat this unless Josuke gets some crazy ability from the spin. So yeah, it seems Wonder of You is as easy as that. Just snap a Toru's fingers, says, okay, you are now inside a calamity, and it really doesn't take any energy from me, but you will never be able to pursue me. You will never even be able to achieve what you want to. Just bad things are constantly going to happen to you. And I guess that might explain why a few chapters ago, when we were like, when Mitsuba was cooking outside, she cut her fingers when she had no intent to pursue the head doctor. And that kind of explains it, that if you are placed under the calamity, you don't even need to have the intention of pursuing. Just bad things are going to happen to you, which is just ridiculously broken. But moving on to the main scene of this chapter, which is going to be Yasuo and Joshu. So a few chapters ago, might have been the last chapter, we saw them link up and see that Joshu is going to help out Yasuo in some way. And we see Joshu feeling a lot of guilt towards his family. He's like, I saw Jobin dead. I just let him kill Narisuke right in front of me. I'm messing up so much. I'm so useless. Like, what have I been doing? He's just feeling a lot of guilt towards all the things that have been happening around his family for the past few chapters here, which is really understandable and definitely would give Joshu some motivation to actually step up to the plate and be a relevant character in the part and do something for once, honestly. But then we get into the juicy bits of this chapter, which is something all of us readers of JoJolion have been theorizing if we'll see something like this within this part, and how it would happen and when it would happen. And it's a fusion between two characters, or another equivalent exchange similar to what happened with Josefume and Kira that created Josuke way before in the part. So ever since that's been happening, every time the new character is introduced, there's a new theory. Like, you guys remember when people were like, Jobin and poor Tom are going to fuse, Kato and Jobin are going to fuse. So we've all been wondering about this whole fusion theory. And I've always found it to be so ridiculous that would actually happen. Like, I never really thought a fusion would take place, because you have to think about it in terms of like realistic in the context of JoJolion. So we've only seen one fusion happen, Josufume and Kira. Well, how did that happen? Well, I believe it was Kira. They both ate the Neurokakaka, and then they were buried underground for several days with a lot of pressure on their body, and that was a very specific instance that allowed their cells to exchange through the process of low kakaka 6251 or the neurokakaka, whatever you want to refer to it as. And that seemed like such specific conditions for a fusion to take place. And I was like, okay, well, if two characters are going to fuse, are they going to have to bury themselves underground? Are they going to have to like squeeze their bodies together? And how long is this process even going to take? And if you guys remember way back, almost 30 chapters ago in JoJolion chapter 66, when we were on the ski lift with Mamazuku, he had given us some information, which was pretty much just a Rocky talking vicariously through Mamazuku about how the Neurokakaka and equivalent exchange works. And we know that it exchanges good cells with new cells, so the old Neurokakaka, if you ate it, it would take things from your own body and it would just do it that way. But with the Neurokakaka, you could have two people together and exchange cells between people, replace the bad cells with good cells. Obviously what happened with Josuke and his fusion. And it also said that for a full fusion to take place between two people and a full exchange of cells would be about 2 hours. It would also require them to be together and have pressure. So I was like, yeah, it just doesn't make sense for a fusion to take place. Like, the two characters would have to agree to a fusion and then go somewhere where they could be really tight and then wait like 2 hours. But it also said that 2 hours was just an estimate of Mamazuku of how long the process would take. But in this chapter, it seems like those rules or what Mamazuku thought would happen is kind of irrelevant, and we see not really a fusion, but an exchange of cells through the Neurokakaka that happens extremely quickly. So now that we see that this is how the Neurokakaka works, I don't think a fusion is out of the question here, especially that the characters in the series are actually alluding to the process of fusing with each other. So it's kind of a Rocky acknowledging the theory of fusion as well. So we might see something like that in the future. If you would have asked me a few months ago, I would have said, no, we'll never see another fusion in JoJolion. But after this chapter, I'm fully on board. I am on board the fusion theory because of the characters, how they talked about it, and especially how we see the Neurokakaka works. So let's get into that. But before, we have a few little bits of dialogue to cover where Joju is saying, like, I want to be brave. I want to save my family. I want to do something good for once. And he offers to sacrifice himself for Yasuo. And they have the Neurokakaka here, and they see that there's 2 fruits on it. They both just got to take a bite out of it. And the process of them coming to this decision takes up a lot of chapters of a lot of dialogue back and forth, and them wondering, like, who's in the bushes? Is it Toru? But pretty much it's nothing new, and it's things that have been said before in previous chapters. And I want to get on to this equivalent exchange here. So while Yasuo and Joshu are coming to the decision of how they're going to exchange, there was a bit of drama going on between the JoJo community of the morality of Joshu's character. Is he a good person? Is he a bad character? And I've always seen Joshu as very consistent in the way that he has good intentions, but he's just a fuck up in all directions. So like in this scene right here, he's just a goofball, I guess, to put it lightly. So he decided to do something good. He wants to go through the equivalent exchange process to help out Yasuo. And he kind of understands how this works. He's like, okay, we both bite the fruit, we put our bodies together, and an exchange will occur. I want to do this for you. I want to help you, Yasuo. And he's like, okay, we got the fruit. But then he's like mounting her from behind, and it's like, oh, Joshu, don't do that, man. That has some like pretty bad implications. But again, it's just like one of those instances of Joshu just being very socially inept in a sense. And yeah, that's just the best way I can explain this scene. It's just Joshu wanting to do something good, but just messing up and giving more fuel to that, like Joshu's a bad character. But overall, I think Joshu, like I said, he has good intentions, but he's just a really silly and quirky character. And as well as Yasuo wasn't even like 100% on board if she wanted to have an exchange yet, and Joshu just kind of went along with it. But I'm pretty sure they both would have need to bite the fruit in order for the exchange to take place. And Yasuo, you see inside sort of her thoughts on what she's thinking about, and she's like, I knew it. Is that Toru back there? Who could possibly be in the bushes? Who could possibly be attacking us right now? And she kind of comes to the conclusion that it's Toru that's doing it. And as soon as she realizes it's her ex-boyfriend, she takes the initiative, she bites the fruit, and then we see this exchange happen. So like I've been saying, I always wondered how a fusion would take place because we never really saw the fusion process of Josufume and Kira. It was kind of off screen, but now we see that almost instantly Joshu and Yasuo's legs combine together. So the whole theory of it taking multiple hours for this exchange to happen is totally out of it, and it happens nearly instantly. And I really love the imagery of their bodies colliding together. It reminds me of a lot of the things we saw with D4C in part 7. So I just really like the way this looks with their legs overlapping. D4C vibes all the way. And this happens almost immediately. So there's a few really cool pages right here where we see Joshu's leg being taken cells from and his arm shrinks up and everything. And even though Joshu is already like losing a lot of his body, Yasuo takes like another bite and she's like, no, I want more. So now Joshu has this tiny little T-Rex arm that's really small. It's kind of gross looking as well. And Yasuo is fully restored and the equivalent exchange worked almost immediately. So that answers a lot of questions. So if both people just eat a fruit and they're just even around each other, an exchange will happen pretty much instantly. So that opens up a world of possibilities if this fruit is going to be used again, which is really exciting. And honestly, I could really see this part ending, or at least this fight ending with like, okay, so Yasuo took Joshu's arm. Joshu does have an arm, and maybe if like they get to a point where they are able to defeat Toru, Joshu's like shoves the Rokakaka down Toru's throat and is like, give me your arm now, bitch. So the way it would end is that like every character, maybe they're just like going on a long process of good characters equivalent exchanging with each other. Like, oh, I lost my arm. Give me yours. No, give me your arm now. Give me your arm now. But then it ends with them taking all the limbs from Toru. So now every one of the good characters is fully restored and Toru is just limbless, just a torso and a head, and then they eventually kill him. That'd be kind of funny if that's how it went down. They were just like, imagine that in a fight now that we have this new Rokakaka, and that's how we see it works. Like, say, oh, I ran into a calamity, my arm's missing. Jobin, come here. Let me go to Jobin's dead body and take some of these decomposing cells from him, and they're just constantly exchanging with each other. But I'm all aboard fusion theory. Fusion theory, 100% for me. I'm sorry I ever doubted it, but yeah, now that we see that essentially the process has been retconned from what we saw in chapter 66, this is exciting stuff. And I wonder if they're going to be able to use this Rokakaka again, because we don't really see how much is left of it. Because they both took a bite, but I don't know if they ate it all. But at the last page we have here, there's no more Rokakaka on the fruit, and I don't really see it anywhere around the characters. So it would be a bit unfortunate if this is the last time we're ever going to see the new Rokakaka used within this part, the last time any characters are ever going to fuse or equivalent exchange or anything like that. I'd really like there to be more of it, and it just be a hot item, just a kind of a wild card that's thrown into the part where characters would be able to use that. Because now that Yasuo and Joshu know how it works, I feel like this is definitely going to be another weapon in their arsenal that they could use and potentially fight against Toru here. And another piece of dialogue that I didn't really mention earlier that I kind of skimmed over because I wanted to talk about the exchange is that Toru actually allowed them to do this. Toru was watching and he was like, it looks like they're gonna eat those fruit, and those are fruit that I really want, but he's also like, I kind of want to see how this plays out. And he also mentioned that no matter how this plays out, it's going to end bad no matter what. So he was like, yeah, let's go ahead. Let's see how this plays out. And it looks like it turned out well for Yasuo as she gets her arm back. But again, you have to remember that Toru allowed this happen. And he also said that Yasuo is still under the effects of Wonder of You. She's still trapped inside a calamity. So I can't expect this to be a full recovery. Maybe there'll be a twist in the next chapter that something actually terrible happened to her, something that went wrong with this equivalent exchange, because one of the last things we see in this chapter is Toru looking very menacingly down at Yasuo and Joshu. But guys, like I said, very, very short chapter this month, 30 pages, 31 including cover page. And yeah, I just personally would have liked to see more of Josuke and Mamazuku and that big reveal in the end of chapter 100 where it's like, oh yeah, Josuke has the spin. Josuke has power of spin. Like what could possibly come from that? And nothing this chapter, but it was still really interesting to see Yasuo get healed, Joshu be really brave and sacrifice himself for someone he cares about, and Toru eating bees was kind of interesting as well. So overall, I would rate this chapter like a 6, 7 out of 10, but I still thought it was really great. Any JoJolion is good JoJolion, and we're not on hiatus next month, so next month hopefully we'll get another full like 45 page chapter and we'll switch over to Josuke's perspective and see where that development goes. But anyways guys, thank you all so much for watching this month's JoJolion review. I will see you guys all next month again. Breakfreesupply.com. get your merch. We will be restocking on the disc design, the run design, and the 1999 design in about 2 to 3 weeks. So if you guys want to stay up to date on when those restock, because they sold out in like 12 hours after the drop. So be sure to follow at ShopBreakFree on Twitter and shop.breakfree on Instagram, and I'll let you guys know when new drops come out. And you can also follow me on Twitter as well. So again, thank you guys for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you guys very soon and next month for another JoJolion review. All right, peace.